Around 450 million people in the world suffer from mental disorders, and nearly 2/3 of them will never seek professional help. Why are these numbers so high, and what are some solutions? Join us in our discussion today on mental health.
इस्लाम कुछ भी हो जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Beacon of Truth, a live program from MTA International Canada Studios. In this program, we discuss a variety of contemporary issues relevant to today's young Muslims. To help analyze the subjects, we get the views and the expertise of some of our guests as well as the general public. You too can get in touch with us with your comments and questions. Send us your questions via Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag BeaconMTA. We're also conducting an online poll. On social media, we asked you that do you know anyone who suffers from any type of mental health issues? Inshallah, we will share the results later in the program. Today I am joined by my two colleagues, Asif Khan Mujahid Sahib and Shahrukh Rizwan Abid Sahib, both of whom are serving as imams and as missionaries of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in Canada. Apart from the spiritual and moral training and the well-being of the local community, part of the responsibilities of the imams is also to remove stigmas and misconceptions that are prevalent in the society. Today, we are discussing depression and mental health issues. Before we begin our discussion, please do keep in mind that we are not providing professional help. In this program, we are discussing the general causes of and raising awareness to mental health issues, considering that 1 in 4 people in the world will be affected by mental or a neurological disorder at some point in their lives. So it's important that we understand the symptoms and the signs of these disorders, because it just may happen that some people that we encounter in our lives may be suffering from one form of mental disorder or another. Before beginning our discussion, let's hear some general notions and perceptions about mental health.
I would describe mental illness as being in a mental state that is affecting your ability to live your life. And it's affecting it negatively, specifically. And it's something that is not just occasionally you might feel depressed, but it's actually something that happens on a daily basis. Not only does it affect your mental health, but it affects your behaviors and it affects everything that you do and how you interact with people, because cognitively there's some dissonance and struggle.
Mental health is just like people's well-being on like the day-to-day, and it's a lot of it isn't in our control, which is really unfortunate.
Mental illnesses have existed for as long as time, and I think humans have been around because everybody's brain functions differently and everybody has differences, and that doesn't mean that their differences are good or bad, but forever anybody who has been considered different, who has a mental illness, has been looked down upon by society. So it's just been about identifying the differences and how we can give better access and resources to people who struggle with these issues.
All right, gentlemen, let's get right into our discussion. Let's start by first talking about the different types of mental illnesses, so we're aware about what all the different kinds of mental illnesses that we should be aware of.
So Nansab, when we talk about mental health, we see that it's very similar to our physical health as well. And mental health is something that everyone possesses. And just like our physical health has different parts and components, our mental health as well is also divided in different parts. Professionals, when they talk about mental illnesses, they categorize mental illnesses into 7 disorders. And that's mood, so that's like depression and having a bipolar disease, anxiety, personality, at the same time eating disorder, and post-traumatic stress, and drug abuse. So if someone's consuming drugs, it affects their health, their health as well. So when we talk about mental illnesses, all across the board, these mental illnesses can be confined within these 7 branches.
So, what does it really mean to be, mentally healthy? Is it just to not possess any of these 7 signs or 7 symptoms, or is there some more to it?
Yeah, so there's actually quite a bit more to it. Essentially, when we talk about mental health, nowadays especially, we always talk about the negative aspect of it, but there is a concept of being mentally healthy, and we need to understand what that means. What does it mean to have a good mental health? If somebody is physically healthy, they have good physical health, we have a notion of what that means. So we have to ask ourselves, if somebody has a good mental health, what does that mean? How is it defined? Mm-hmm. So the World Health Organization, in regards to health in general, defines health as not merely the absence of disease or infirmity or illness, but rather they say that it is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Now that's the definition for health in general. But mental health specifically is defined as a state of well-being in which a person is able to realize and understand what their potential is, has the ability to cope with the normal stresses of life, is able to work productively and fruitfully if they so desire, and if they so desire, has the ability to contribute to their social circles and their communities. Now, this is just a loose definition which has been provided by the World Health Organization. However, at the same time, now that we understand loosely what it means to be, what mental health is, and we have a notion of what physical health is, at the same time, we need to understand what spiritual health is, because it is the conglomeration of these 3 things which actually defines someone's health, and they all have an effect on each other. So we need to understand what it means to be spiritually healthy. So this has been discussed by Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam and all the Khulafa. And a person actually asked Hazrat Khifatul Masih Rabi rahimahullah ta'ala in regards to what it means to have inner peace and to be spiritually content. And Hazrat Khifatul Masih Rabi rahimahullah, he explained it by saying, by taking it back to this concept of being God-like. So there's a verse in the Holy Quran in which it talks about the colors of Allah Ta'ala. And what this means is that as human beings, we need to mimic and inculcate the attributes and the characteristics of Allah Ta'ala within ourselves. We have to be like God to a certain extent though. That's what we have to remember, because us as human beings, we can't be a God. So we have to be God-like to a certain extent, or to whatever extent that we can be as human beings. And whenever there is an incongruity or a type of contradiction with our personality and the personality of God, then we see that in that situation, a person is not spiritually healthy and they don't have inner peace.
Right.
So if somebody is able to actually go along this path and attain inner peace, that is one part of the equation to becoming mentally healthy and physically healthy as well. So this is something that we should always keep in mind as well.
So there's a lot of multifaceted ways to know if someone is mentally healthy, including the physical aspect, the spiritual aspect.
Yes, of course.
Jazakallah. Now, the alarming number of mental health issues that we see in society makes one wonder why so many people are affected by this illness, especially considering that there's a sharp rise in the number of youngsters who are facing this issue. But before that, let's listen to Dr. Aleem Khan Sahib, who works as a professor of psychiatry at the University Hospital in Windsor, Ontario.
Mental health is a very vast subject, and people range from children to the old age people. We see a whole range of different mental illnesses, the whole spectrum of a lifetime. Like in children, people they have some like a developmental disorder, autistic disorder, anxiety, ADHD, behavior, those kind of things we see in those people. Anxiety manifests very early in the life with the OCD, some eating problem as a teenager, mood problem, they start getting very early in life. When we see the mental health, about 50% of the mental health problem, they manifest before the age of 14. And about 70% of mental health problem, they manifest before the age of 24. So it is very important to identify those illnesses right in the start, in the beginning. When we identify that in the beginning, in the start of the illness, we can modify the course of the illness, we can treat them. Unfortunately, we don't have education about the mental health issues or mental health problems. and we think that it is a character flaw or personality weakness which is causing all those problems. It is not a personality weakness, it is not a character flaw, it is a genuine illness. Let me put it this way, brain is an organ just like heart, lung, kidney, liver. People, they can get heart problem, lung problem. Same way people can get a brain problem. Like for example, if somebody is having some lungs problem, we will see symptoms of difficulty breathing because the lungs function is breathing, so they manifest as a breathing problem. Same way, because brain controls our emotions, our behavior. So when we have a problem with the brain illnesses, it affects our behavior, our emotions, our thinkings. So we see those kind of symptoms with anxiety or depression or thinking problem like a paranoia or delusions or so those kind of things. So these are not personality weakness, or these are not caused by any stress or something. These are the chemical imbalance. The chemistry is there, genetics is there, which are causing those problems.
Jazakallah, Dr. Saab. Earlier, I mentioned that the viewers, they can get in touch with us with their comments and questions. You can send us your questions via Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag BeaconMTA. Many people are responding to some questions that we asked on Twitter about depression and mental health. They've shared their views and thoughts. This first comment is from Shakil Mirza Sahib. He says that most youth who I've encountered, they have mental health issues due to problematic families. He says that I work as a counselor on a helpline, and most calls surround abusive members or a lack of support or heavy cultural or familial expectations. He says the environment is huge in presentation of the mental health symptoms. A comment from Kanata Tahir Saiba, she says that sometimes when I'm feeling anxious, nervous and scared, she says I personally read Ayatul Kursi and it relieves my heart and mind of everything. She states that if you believe that God will protect and that He is the most powerful and compassionate, then He will always be there by your side. And this is a very good approach. In Hadith, we also find the recitation of Surah Fatiha to alleviate all kinds of pains and sorrows. It's even known as Ash-Shifa, or the cure. A comment from Rifat Adnan Saiba, she says that a lack of motivation, loneliness, shame, instability, disassociation, hopelessness, depression, and exhaustion. These are just a few battles that a person with mental illnesses fights every day. She says that they attempt to act normally while battling unimaginable pain. Hope and prayers are the key. And we also asked, what are some misconceptions that you've heard about mental health? This comment comes in from Laika Ahmed Saiba. She says, one misconception, that praying would automatically cure you of any psychiatric illness, and that without any medical treatment, although like all diseases, these too need proper medical attention. Madiha Hafiz Sahiba, she comments another misconception, that sometimes people judge by hardships that the other person is having, and they say that God knows if it's a punishment for their sins or they must have done something wrong, and now this mental illness is due to their regret or their bitter memories. And Asifa Ahmed Saiba, she comments about another misconception she has heard, that bad parenting could cause children to grow up having mental issues. Although some events in childhood might have an effect in certain cases, but broadly speaking, bad parenting alone is not a cause, and that other factors could play a role, like the environment and also genetics. Jazakallah to our viewers who have sent in these comments. Now, the World Health Organization states that stigma, discrimination and neglect, these prevent people from getting treatment. And we should understand that many things can affect our state of mind. And we may face different trials and tribulations as part of life, but our coping mechanisms sometimes become overwhelmed. The focus of our program today is to show that there is help available. And inshallah, we'll be discussing the different means of getting help. But before that, let's hear what the general public say about the causes of mental health issues.
Yeah, I think it definitely has to do with better identification. I think mental health issues have always been around, but I think us talking about it has led to an increase in awareness.
I think in a social sense, the society, in this particular context, Canadian society, North American society has a tendency to compartmentalize our aspects of life. You have your work life, your family life, your home life, life with your friends, and the dichotomies that are created by presenting yourself as a particular person in those spaces forces you to be different people at different times, and trying to mesh all of that into one individual might be one of the stressors that causes mental health issues, among other, inequalities that happen in society that cause people to struggle, and that causes stress, and stress being an indicator or a cause factor for mental health issues too.
It's those face-to-face relationships that really help a person. And we're in a society where everyone is more and more connected than ever before, but also more lonely than ever before. And it's a strange phenomena because you can have 500, 600 Facebook friends, but not really have any close, intimate relationships where people know you and they know your struggles, they know your victories as well.
So we just heard some of the understanding of some regular people, and it seems quite accurate. And the causes in mental health issues, why has there been such a spike in them recently?
So, Hanasa, there is this notion amongst the normal society that there's been this huge spike in mental health issues in the past 5 to 10 years. Now, there are actually two opinions in regards to this. Some people say that there's been a huge spike, and before, mental health issues weren't actually that prevalent. And there's this other opinion that shows that, maybe there were mental health issues, there just wasn't a lot of awareness. And people, they didn't realize that instead of just experiencing regular sadness, regular bouts of stress or anxiety, they were actually going through mental health disorders. So there are these two different opinions, and the data is actually somewhat conflicting in regards to it. But this is all besides the point. What we have to realize is that what the data is telling us now is that at the end of the day, the society that we are in, we as a society are facing this. There is somewhat of an epidemic, and quote unquote, the word has been used as an epidemic, that mental health issues are real. They are tangible. This is something that almost like a lot of people are actually facing. And there are some basic statistics that actually go about proving this, that are taken from credible sources such as the WHO, the World Health Organization, which states that approximately 20% of children or adolescents will face some type of mental health issue or disorder. And these are the children of our societies, let alone the actual adults who are facing or who have to constantly face the stresses of providing for their families, of functioning and being a functioning member of society. Another statistic is that there are approximately 800,000 suicides on a yearly basis. And there is data which suggests that for every suicide, there are 20 suicide attempts. This is a staggering number, to think that there are that many people who are facing such stresses and are unable to cope with certain events that are going on in their lives. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services actually published that approximately 50% of Americans will face some type of mental health disorder or some type of mental health issue within their lifetime. That's 1 in 2 Americans. 50% is a huge number. So to think that like this number is actually it's so prevalent in society. It's just staggering to see. Now, besides this, when we're looking at the causes, one such cause that's been published, it was published in an article for The Independent. And what they published was that there was a study which was conducted of 1,000 people, a small study, which showed that 41% of these 1,000 people actually had experienced some type of sadness, anxiety, fear, or worry, or even depression when using social media. So this is one cause. Now, what we have to look at when we're understanding the causes of mental health issues, the causes are not singular. Mm-hmm. Or there are many causes. Just like when we look at our physical health, there are many causes in regards to any type of physical illness which we may be feeling. And sometimes it's just not one single cause. It is a conglomeration or a plethora of causes which lead to some type of physical ailment. And this is the same thing when it comes to mental health. So this is kind of the gist of in regards to the notion of why people think that there's been a spike, whether it has or it hasn't. The fact of the matter remains, we currently still are facing this epidemic together as a society.
And I'm sure social media. Asif Saab mentioned one aspect, but there must be other causes as well. If there's been studies on this for such a long time.
So, Nansa, the thing is that mental health experts, they say that to diagnose the cause for mental illness is very controversial. That's because the mind is a very complex thing. It's not that easy to understand. And as we move on, as we go on in time, we make new discoveries. Certain things that can be the causes for this illness is abuse, sexual abuse, isolation, loneliness, bullying, violence, abuse of drugs, head injury. Also at the same time, if someone close to us passes away, right? So all these things can be a cause of mental illness. And another thing is that it might be genetic as well. And parents, it's possible that parents can pass these illnesses on to their future generations. But like I said, there's no set rules or set law for this. And that's because as we go on, we learn new things. And like social media was something that was not an issue, 50 years ago, but now it is. Right. So as we go on and as we make new discoveries, we see that there are new causes, that lead to mental illnesses.
Jazakumullah. Now we will be discussing the role of religion in alleviating mental health issues. But first, let's hear what people say about the relationship or their understanding of the relationship between mental health and religion.
I think it depends on the person. I think a lot of people can grow up in religions that restrict their ability to look at their mental health and almost dismiss the validation of it. But I think it depends on the person. I've seen religion help a lot of people with mental health, and I've also seen it greatly detriment their ability to cope with stuff. So,
religion is one of those things where it could help you a lot or harm you a lot. So it depends on how you or the person personally takes it. And also, the interpretation of religion also affects how it affects a person's mental health. For example, I think every major world religion has some sort of a forgiving and compassionate side, and then it has that whole damnation, you're wrong side.
My experience has been that religion, it helps with my mental health. So specifically as a student, for me, it is incredibly freeing to know that my identity is not in my marks or in my performance at school, but rather it's in who I am as a person and who God created me to be. And so in that respect, having those religious views tremendously improve my mental health.
I grew up Catholic, and I think that particular religion can be restrictive to addressing mental health issues.
So now it's very important that we talk about ways to treat mental health, and what are some ways that if somebody out there, viewers who are watching, if they know someone or if they maybe themselves or they're suffering from this, what can they do to get help?
Yep. So in regards to treating mental health issues, we have to treat our mental health similar to the way we treat our physical health, because there are parallels there. So we should just, at a basic level, we should ask ourselves, what do we do when we are physically unhealthy or we feel as if we're physically ill? Our first step is, okay, what can we do within the home? What can we do to change our environment to ensure that my physical health will no longer be tainted, or that no detriments are actually reaching my physical health? So first off, look at the house environment. Are there certain things that you can change inside your home? The second thing is that if you have made certain changes within your home and you notice that you are still remaining ill, you have tried herbal remedies, home remedies, and it's not working. What do you do if you feel as if you've gotten a cold and you're not getting better? You go to your local family doctor, the walk-in medical clinic, what have you. You go and you seek help from a medical professional. But before doing that, just like when we feel physically ill, we know that there are certain symptoms. So everybody should be aware of certain symptoms and or quote-unquote early warning signs in regards to issues with your mental health. And these are actually published by, again, the World Health Organization, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. It's also published on the CDC, where there are some general early warning signs which are given. But again, I'm going to read some of these signs up, but again, they should be taken with a grain of salt, and I'll explain that in a minute. So some of the early warning signs are, for example, sleeping too much or too little, or having low to no energy, unexplained aches and pains, thoughts of, or harmful thoughts, feelings of loneliness, sometimes just increased memory loss, or increased bouts of confusion. Now, in regards to these symptoms, we have to remember that just because you may be exhibiting a symptom doesn't mean that you have a disease. A lot of these symptoms, for example, sleeping too much or too little, this could literally just mean that you've been busy, or you just have a little bit too much energy and you're not able to fall asleep. So that you shouldn't jump to the conclusion and start to self-diagnose in this situation. Again, for example, feeling unusually confused or having memory problems. If your day-to-day schedule has increased and you're becoming more and more busy, naturally you will start to forget some things. You might be confused at work a little bit here and there, but that doesn't mean that you have some type of a mental health issue. Remember, these are published as early warning signs. You have to look at them, try and figure it out, try and make some changes within your own lifestyle. If you see that these issues are persisting, that doesn't mean that you have a mental health issue. That means go talk to a medical professional. Treat your mental health the way you treat your physical health. An example of this is, and again, coming back to these early warning signs, an example of this is, let's take the example of bronchitis or even the common cold. If you were to take the symptoms of bronchitis and put them on any Google search or any search engine, Google, Bing, whatever you have, and you would look at the symptoms and what kind of diseases they're related to, you would self-diagnose, and a lot of the times you would end up with something terminal. The symptoms for bronchitis or even the common cold are very common with esophageal or lung cancer. So again, we shouldn't diagnose. We're not professionals. We need to go to the professionals, and we have access to them. So that's one thing. So that's an overall gist of how to go about dealing with possible mental health issues. Besides this, I understand that there's this. We know actually that there is this stigma within society of getting help in regards to mental health issues. So first and foremost, it's a stigma. That literally means that it is something negative. Now, what can we as a society do to get rid of the stigma? Again, it's to raise awareness. Stigmas come about from ignorance, and the only way to get rid of ignorance from a society is to disseminate knowledge, and that is the purpose of this show as well, and that's the purpose of all these other awareness campaigns as well. So we, in our own social surroundings, should actually go about raising awareness in regards to mental health issues and let people know that these are normal issues. These are common issues. It's not something to be ashamed of, and actually be empowering to one another as a community. Besides this, we understand also that when it comes to stigmas, they're not going to disappear overnight. So there are ways to go about getting help in a private manner as well, and this will be discussed later on. Another aspect that we should definitely highlight is the aspect of prayer. Allah Ta'ala states in the Quran, "Allah bi zikrillahi tatma'innul qulub," that it is by way of the remembrance of Allah that the hearts of man, or the hearts of human beings, receive contentment and peace. And we need to remember Allah Ta'ala and pray to Allah Ta'ala. And we need to make this one part of the equation towards our health. Look, if somebody goes, let's say, for example, somebody goes skiing and they break their leg, they're not going to go home and just pray to Allah Ta'ala that their leg gets better and try walking on their leg. They're going to go to the doctor. They're going to tell them, I'm having pain. The doctor will diagnose it. Get a cast, get your painkillers, whatever it may be. Go home, pray to Allah Ta'ala for a speedy recovery. That is the process with our physical health. That should be the process with our mental health as well. Prayer is a definite and necessary part of the equation. However, it's not the only part of the equation. We should always seek medical help.
Jazakumullah. And speaking of seeking medical help, we asked Dr. Aleem Saab a second question about the role of family members and the correct diagnosis.
It is well documented in psychiatric research that about 50% of the people, they start showing symptoms of mental health before the age of 14. So what I have seen in my practice, we see two kind of different responses from the family or friend. Either we try to hide those things, we ignore those symptoms and don't take our kid for the treatment, or we take another route and start blaming them that, oh, the person is attention seeking or this and that. The both approaches are wrong. And what happens when those kids, they don't know how to deal with their symptoms, then they start having some behavioral problems. As a family and friend, we can play a big role at helping our loved one with the mental health issues. First of all, we have to educate ourselves to see what are the warning signs of any mental health. we know the mental health is manifested as a problem in behavior, problem in emotion, problem in thinking, getting depressed or sad or anxious or worried or having some unusual thoughts like getting paranoid. So identifying those things is very important. And then encouraging our loved one to go to see a family doctor or a specialist to get help for those things. And it is only possible when we know what are the signs and symptoms of warning signs of mental health. So educating ourselves, educating our family member, discussing those things openly in the family is very important. It should not stay as a stigma that mental health is a stigma. It should be discussed openly with the family members, with children, with brothers and sisters, that it is a genuine illness. And these are the warning signs. And if we see those things, then we have to go take help.
We definitely need to know the warning signs. And Sharak Saab, how important is it to be proactive, whether you're a family member, whether you're a friend, and what are some things that we can do?
So Nansab, this answer can be divided into three parts. The first thing that we need to know is that, we all have problems, we all have issues, we all have trials, whether we are old or young. Even elderly people, they suffer, from mental illnesses. So we all do. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. And if we need help, we should go get that help. With this said, sometimes, we tend to think that I don't want anyone else to find out about my problem. So for that, we have resources available to us. There are online chats, online help that the government provides for us to go on and speak to someone. There are distress centers that we can call and speak to someone and be guided. At the same time, we can always speak to our family doctor. And a family doctor cannot, reveal to anybody else that, this person came to you with this problem. In schools, we have guidance counselors. In universities and colleges, we have therapists. They're there to help as well. So we have all of these platforms and these resources, for people to go and get help. One thing that's very important that when you go online, we do not go into some random forums. It's important to know that those chats, they are funded by the government, so we have to look for those. The second part to this, second answer is that, sometimes we should become a support for those people who are suffering. So if we know someone, who is sad and is suffering from a mental illness, rather than ignoring them, we should go and help them and become their support. And the best thing is if a family member can do that or a friend. And as members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, we should come together as a community as well and help someone. And the second son of the promised Messiah, he writes that the group of believers are a support for one another in times of happiness and sadness, and they gain comfort, tranquility, and strength from the support of one another. This is the focal point of the Jamaat. So we see that, he talks about coming together and helping those who are sad. At the same time, there's another study that says that those who have some sort of religious affiliation and are spiritually inclined, they tend to forget, events pretty quickly. So, going back to prayer, because, religion and prayer actually gives you that element of hope. Then there are certain things that we can do as a prevention, or certain things that we can do to help us. And last year, Hazur, may Allah be his helper, he was addressing the volunteers of Germany, and he said that, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he suffered through a lot of trials, and he had a lot of problems. But the one thing that the companion said was that he always had a smile on his face. So despite going through problems and trials, he had a smile on his face. And there's a hadith of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, in Bukhari, in which he says that, be cheerful with your family, be happy with them. So the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, he wanted to create this positive environment for people, to be happy. And this is the same thing that the Khulafa Ahmadiyyat have done as well. The third Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Nasir ibn Saab, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that in 1974, when the Jamaat was going through severe persecution, he said that keep smiling. They cannot take away our smiles. So he commanded the Jamaat to keep smiling. Now, but what does smiling do? And in Columbia University, there was a research done. And they have this thing called the smile therapy. And what they came up with was that smile actually relieves stress. Smiling elevates our mood. It boosts our immune system. And it gives us a very positive thinking tool as well. So when we smile, it makes us happy. So we see that, our physical expression has an effect on our health as well. So these are certain things. The last thing that we can do, and we have all witnessed this, is when there are people that are struggling, and sometimes they're very sad, and they go and meet Hazur. And when they come out of that meeting, they're extremely happy, and they feel like a burden has been taken off. And me, myself, I witnessed here in 2016 that there was this one person, she was alone with her child, and she was very sad. And when she walked into Hazur's office and she came out, she was crying and she was smiling, and she couldn't stop smiling at all. So, having to know that there is a person who loves us, who cares for us, and to go and talk to him about our burdens, that also helps in preventing, stress that can eventually lead to depression.
And these are some of the things that people can try to do to try to overcome their illnesses or mental problems. Jazakumullah. Now, earlier through social media, we asked the viewers if you know anyone who suffers from any type of mental health issues. The results of our poll are in, and 61% are saying that they know someone, 19% are saying they do not know, and 20% are not sure. So majority of people, they know someone, maybe it's a family member, perhaps a friend, maybe it's themselves, but they're suffering from this mental illness.
Yep. And these statistics or this data that's actually being shown, it's actually perfectly in line with what we've been discussing. The fact that there are mental health issues, and with this poll, we know for a fact that there are people within our own community who are dealing with these issues as well. What we have to understand at the same time, however, is that usually when we're talking about mental health issues, even within the community, on any type of forum whatsoever, we are usually addressing the youth. What we have to understand is that the elderly are also stricken with these same illnesses. And there are some statistics which actually show that that women fall prey to mental health issues more so than men, to a certain extent. So we have to understand that when we are approaching people or when we are discussing this, mental health issues, they affect everyone. So we have to make sure that we're taking care of everyone as well. Now, going back to what Shahrukh Saab said as well, one very important aspect of taking care of our mental health is to make sure that we build a relationship with Allah Ta'ala and build a relationship with Khalifa-e-Waqt.
Right.
And by way of Khalifa-e-Waqt, build a relationship with Allah Ta'ala. And this is something which will definitely have some type of a positive effect on our mental health, on our mental health capacities. Also, at the same time, what we have to understand is that this is not a one-and-all cure. The best cure is a holistic cure. So this is one part of the equation. We have to take it back to having a very strong bond with Khilafat. Sometimes you just want someone to talk to. And Huzur Anwar is here so that we can express our deepest emotions, our deepest desires to Huzur Anwar as well. So, and this isn't only for the youth, this is for the elderly as well. The society that we live in, our parents are under a lot of stress. Mm-hmm. For a lot of us, our parents are immigrants. They came to a society where they didn't know the language, that they need to fend for themselves and take care of their children. And we as the youth need to understand where our parents are coming from as well. And we need to take care of them just the way they took care of us.
And be very understanding.
Of course.
Jazakumullah. I mentioned in the beginning of the program that the viewers can send in their questions as well. So we have a few questions that have come in. Let's start with you, Shahrukh Saab. This question comes from Buller Sahib. He asks that as believers, sometimes we regrettably deviate from the path of righteousness and commit shameful sins. The thought of displeasing God creates feelings of despair that eventually accumulate into depression and losing hope of forgiveness. So what do you advise with this?
There's a verse of the Holy Quran, and this is a question that's often asked. There's a verse of the Holy Quran in Surah Zumar. God says that, "O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, do not despair from the mercy of Allah." So God is giving us that hope that don't despair, no matter how much you have sinned. And there's a hadith of the Holy Prophet ﷺ as well, in which he said that there's no sin, that God cannot repent for. So, there is that element of hope. And, there's this quotation of the promised Messiah, which I always keep handy, and the quotation is that, think not you are sinners. Will your prayers be heard? Do not think this way. Man makes mistakes, but a time comes when he is able to overpower his sinning self. This power to overpower the sinning self is also built into the nature of man. Water puts out fire. This is part of its nature, howsoever you may heat it. When water drops on fire, it must put it out. That is natural. So is a man purified by nature. Every man has this purifying property. Do not feel defeated because you have been involved in sin. Sin is like a stain on the surface of a piece of cloth. It can be washed away. Your habits, your dispositions may be dominated ever so much by your passions. Pray to God, weeping, crying. He will not let your prayers go to waste. He is full of compassion. So that element of hope is given by God and His prophets.
Jazakallah for sharing that quote. Another question, this one comes in from Sabiha Ashraf Sahiba. And she asked that many people don't openly discuss and share what they're going through in depression because of the saying of people that what will people say. So how do we change this mentality?
Well, again, changing this mentality, this is the stigma, what will people say, right? And this is found within specific social circles as well. So the main thing to do is raise awareness. We've discussed this before, is raising awareness and letting people know that, hey, this is something normal. It affects people. We should empower one another and we should help one another in regards to this. At the same time, when people say negative things, we shouldn't give them any weight. What we have to realize is that we need to please Allah Ta'ala as opposed to attempting to please people or worrying about what people say. If somebody does say something, we should look at what they're saying and take whatever positives we can from it and leave all negative. So there's an example of this as well. For example, there's an example of a man who is with his son. The man is riding on a donkey and he's riding into a village. And the villagers say, what kind of a man is this? He doesn't take care of his son. He doesn't have any love for him. He's riding on the donkey and his poor son has to walk. They go to another village and this time the son is riding on the donkey. The villagers look at him and they say, what kind of a son is this? He has no respect for his father. He has no care for his father. What kind of father is this? He doesn't have any self-respect. Things like this, negative talks. They go to the next village and they're both riding on the donkey. So everyone says, poor donkey, there's so much stress on the donkey. These people have no care for the creatures underneath them. Then they go to the fourth village and no one's on the donkey. And the people start saying, look, they don't even know the function of a donkey. No one's sitting on top of it. There's nothing loaded on it. So what we have to realize is that we should only take the negative, we should only take the positive and leave the negative. And at the same time, we need to be pleasing Allah Ta'ala before anyone else.
Jazakumullah, and we'll take just a couple more comments. This comment comes in from AMA UK Gallery. They comment that the emphasis seems to be mental health for young people. Elderly people go through this as well, and often worse. And there are so many issues that can affect people of an older age. Problem is that there's no one to talk to. And you just addressed that earlier. And one last comment, someone commented that spiritual health encompasses everything holistically. The Holy Prophet ﷺ says that there is an organ in the body, and when it heals, the entire body heals. And when it suffers, the entire body suffers. Alas, it is the heart. Jazakallah to our viewers for their comments and their questions. Jazakallah for sharing your experiences on mental health issues and how they affect us. And it affects not just those people who are affected by it, but indirectly it affects the rest of society. And the best thing that we can do for ourselves and our loved ones who are affected by mental health issues is to seek that professional help. We hope that you learned from our discussion today, and we will be more aware of the issues related to mental health. Jazakallah Asif Sahib, Jazakallah Shahrukh Sahib for a very informative discussion. Thank you for tuning in and joining our conversation. Please do visit our social media accounts on Twitter and Instagram, which is at beacon_MTA. This is where we share the video clips and the links to the full episodes of our previous programs in case you missed out on any of them. Join us again same time next week at 1900 GMT on Beacon of Truth. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.
फैलाएंगे सदाकते इस्लाम कुछ भी हो जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें, जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े